Then let's turn our attention to pro running, run here in South Australia by the SA Athletic League. They do a fantastic job. Coming up this weekend is the Camden Classic, one of the highlights on their calendar. Joining us now from the SA Athletic League is Shane Bewry. Shane, welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good afternoon to all.
Now, the Bay Sheffield is obviously your blue ribbon event. Where does the Camden Classic rate?
Look, it probably, Wallace sits just behind the Bay Sheffield. The key focus in the major events at Camden are the 400-metre women's and men's classic events, whereas the Bay Sheffield is predominantly the sprints. They take the glory down there and they get the headlines, notwithstanding that there is a range of events at the Bay Sheffield, but it certainly sits close in behind Bay Sheffield.
Shane, there seems to have been a real uptick in the prestige around this event, and I guess in part because Camden Oval has been redeveloped. It looks amazing now. They've always put a lot of effort into it, but even, the pavers for the winners, which I know we do for the Bay Sheffield as well down in front of Collie Reserve there, but all of those sorts of things, I imagine for the athlete, there is a lot riding on being a Camden Classic winner.
Certainly is, Ben. It's I think at the South Australian Athletic League this year, more so than ever, we've tried to recognise that the pro running events are an event as opposed to just an athletic race. Now, that's not to dismiss or disrespect any of the amateur athletic races. I mean, you go to the States and the national titles and there's terrific athletes running. But as far as an event with perhaps entertainment, a little bit of razzmatazz, think of Live Golf and those events around that. That's probably the event status that we're trying to create for the cell. And we've certainly achieved that to some extent at the Bay Sheffield down at Collie. I mean, that lends itself to event status and all of the show business that goes with it far better than most. And we're trying to do a little bit of that at Camden. But you will certainly see a focus on event status with the cell over the next couple of years.
Shane, let's just touch on the Camden Classic. As we've already outlined, a massive event for both men and women. Perhaps just give us a bit of your own preview. Let's start with the women. Who do you think is going to be around the mark come the final race?
The women's race for the 400-metre Camden Classic is pretty much characterised by the youth that have come through. I think the favourite for the race is Charlotte McAuliffe. She's an Australian under-20 representative that's just been over late 2024 competing in Peru for Australia. Charlotte's 16, I think, 15 to 16. She's probably the fastest 400-metre runner almost in the nation these days, particularly under 20. So Charlotte's running. We've got a number of other really key competitors: Victoria Chalsh, Georgie Fielder, Milan Murphy, who's the sister of Aidan Murphy, a good sprinter.
Okay. Yeah, well,
and
he's got a reputation.
He certainly has. Emma Henkel and Ella Byrne. Ella Byrne runs in everything from the sprints all the way through to the middle distance. So it's a really tight field. Charlotte McAuliffe will be starting well back, I dare say, and giving them a few metres start. But I would expect her to almost run them down on a pretty tight corners at Camden. They're pretty tough to navigate at all the pro races, make a race of it. But look, they're all local runners. They're all really putting in hard and participating in a lot of the cell events. So it's good to see. So it'll be a really strong field.
Shane, you brought up the young Murphy girl, Aidan Murphy, the older brother, I would imagine. He holds the 100 and 200 metre record in amateur running, and his mum, Tanya Van Heer, holds the state record in 100 and 200 for the women. So certainly some pedigree there. Just what was her first name again, the Murphy girl that we'll keep an eye out for? Milan. There you are.
Melarn. Yeah, so there's certainly some history there in that family, and Milan's a really good runner over both the 100, 200 and out to the 4. So it'll be interesting to see how she goes. And you're right, her mother holds records for quite some time now, and no one's beating them.
No. And what about the men, Shane?
Okay, so the men's field, I think we've been very lucky with the women's racing in the cell over the last few months. It's been incredibly high calibre. We've had a lot of elite athletes here, and in some respects it's overshadowed the men's running, but that's not to be disrespectful to the men by any means. I think the key chances in the men's Camden Classic is Blake Jones, Ryan Atkins, Toby Cook, Thomas McClure, Hayden Roth, and an ex-Melbourne Victory soccer player, Lewis Laurie Latanzio.
Wow.
So they're the the 6 key chances we see there. Blake Jones is he's having his second start in the Classic, and he's a very fast runner. Bronze medalist at the state championships in the 400 last year. On the other side, Ryan Atkins has been running for a long time in these events, always a finalist, and it'd be terrific to see him. I think he's been in 8 of these events, or 7 of these events, and made the finals. It'd be good to see him win one with his 8th.
He's due, surely, Shane.
Yes, and I think if my memory serves me correctly, he runs out of Port Adelaide, so he's a good local boy, and we like to get behind the locals.
Shane, perhaps we'll have people listening and they're talking about how, one athlete is giving another a bit of a head start. Just explain for those who are perhaps new to all of this, how pro running works, how the handicap system works, and I guess how the scrutineers on these sorts of things have to adjust people's handicaps as they improve and start to win a few races.
Pro athletics is different to the amateurs, and it's a very historical view, really, in precedence. The pro events are characterised by having athletes prescribed a handicap in accordance with their speed over X metres of running. So let's use the 120 metre sprint as the example here. The athletes, in accordance with their times, have an established metres per second rate, and the handicapper can identify the fastest through to the slowest and prescribe them a handicap of meterage to theoretically have everybody finish on the dime at the same time. That doesn't always work, and it's easier said than done. However, logically and statistically, it can be done. And for an example, the back marker may be of 0 metres, so they will run the full 120 metre sprint, and we may have front runners all the way out to 15 to 20 to 25 metres with a head start effectively there. The logic is, again, that they will all conclude simultaneously. And what it provides is very competitive running. If you go to the state or national athletics for amateurs, you'll find races characterised by the faster sprinters getting out in front and winning convincingly, and less of a competitive finish, if you like. So the pros are characterised by handicaps, exactly the same as the Melbourne Cup. The handicappers and the judges and the stewards, etc., monitor this. They provide a level of governance to keep an eye on performances on the day, because some runners may not run up to speed on a particular day to try and preserve their handicap for a later event. Exactly the same as the stewards do in the Melbourne Cup. Keep an eye on the horses and the jockeys that don't put in their best, if you like, and try, through to runners that are beating their handicap well and truly, and they'll be pulled back. So the handicaps each year and each meet can adjust up and down in accordance with the speed of the racer.
With that in mind, does it mean that you have a greater range of ages that can compete?
Yes, you certainly do, Wallace. We have in the sprints, as an example, we'll have the 15 to 16-year-old youths that are coming through, running against a range of people in the open, typical elite area, through to the over 35s. They can all go in the open athletics meets, and they can all be handicapped to theoretically have a competitive finish.
I seem to recall there was a woman from Perth who I think might have even been in her 60s who entered in the Women's Bay Sheffield last year. Shane, you might recall that story better than me.
I do remember the one you mean, yes. And she competed very well, and she was super fit. I wasn't sure if she was in her 60s, would have been maybe mid-50s, I think, but extraordinarily fit, extraordinarily well prepared. Didn't quite make the final, but certainly competed hard and was nowhere near a front runner.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it is there are a whole host of athletic abilities. Obviously, you've got to be a good runner if you're going to be entering in a Bay Sheffield or a Camden Classic, of course. But the fact that the good runner and the great runner can actually have a decent race off is a wonderful asset that pro running offers. Hey, can we just touch back on last weekend, the Ranella Gift? I did have a quick look at those races online. My goodness, Jordan McMillan, who a former Bay Sheffield winner, won it in 2018. What a thrilling race that was. The youngster who pipped her, well, she just couldn't peg her back, could she, in that final? But she's really impressive to me, Jordan. I mean, you see a lot of these young kids who do well as a teenager in sprinting, and they can kind of never quite take that next step. But she's a 100-metre champion in the amateur level, and she's very heavily invested in pro running as well. You must be really impressed with what she's doing.
Oh, absolutely. Geordie's an outstanding runner and a terrific person. She runs not only in the track, For the amateur athletics, she runs in the SAL events. For the pros, she runs in the surf events on the sand, which is a pretty tough old event. So no, she's an outstanding young lady, and so she ran off a handicap of 0.75 last week. She was pipped by the narrowest of margins.
2/100ths of a second or something, I think I saw, Shane.
Yes, or one 1/100th, I think, of a second, by Lakeisha Sheffield, who was off 9 metres. So she got a 9 metre head start, and Geordie nearly ran her down. And Geordie has been starting as a back marker for years now because she's so quick. So for those out there that recognise the really good runners, invariably they are starting back in the red on the back marker. And that's just a fact of life of being a sharp runner. And Geordie, she'll be heading off to the Nationals in April in Perth with all the other elite talent around the place, if you like.
Yeah, credit to the handicapper for that one. The first and second 1/100th of a second apart. Shane, can you just take us back to the Bay Sheffield? It's an iconic event in South Australia. It is just a really special part of that period between Christmas and New Year. Just take us back to those last few days of 2024 and what that event means to South Australia.
Well, I might start again, Ben, with the women's race there, because we had a significant level of talent come to South Australia on the women's 120 metre Bay Sheffield. None more so than Bree Masters, our Olympian in 2024. She was pipped in the final by the barest of margins by Taylor Spackman, a local girl. And just to talk to the handicap there, Bree, of course, was off. She was the back marker off 0. Taylor Spackman got a 6.5 metre start, and Bree couldn't quite run her down. But, importantly, it was an outstanding final. Bree is an outstanding athlete and ambassador for the game. So for our youth, the young girls and the young boys that were in the area and all running in their events, to see someone like Bree Masters turn up, such a professional and such an outstanding young lady, was terrific. But really competitive field. We had 2 or 3 of the Australian under 20 sprinters. The ladies turn up. They didn't even make the final. They were knocked out prior to the final, but it just goes to echo the competitive nature of the women's sprinting down here in South Australia. It's an outstanding. But 2 of our other local competitors made the final. Olivia Hastings, Kayla Lem, that came in 5th and 6th, and they're really hardened professionals, and they go to the Nationals every year, etc. So it was a great final. The women's. Men's Bay Sheffield was won by Sam Clark, Queenslander, off 6 metres. A very competitive field in the men's. Local boy Thomas Semler came equal second with Dashiell Muir. So we had a dead heat for second and third. But Sam Clark, Queenslander, came down. Wasn't really necessarily favoured to win. Put together an outstanding run in the final. Was running him away from them on the line, frankly. He only won by 0.2 of a second, but his acceleration was extraordinary. And we had 3 other local boys, the Blisno twins and Tom Perry, coming 4th, 5th and 6th, respectively. So another great field. We didn't necessarily get the national appeal into the men's like we did with Bree Masters and Olivia May and these sorts of people that came to town for the women's, but nonetheless, tough fields. A lot of entries. Entries are up for the Bay Sheffield, and the event was simply outstanding.
Shane, before we get away from the Bay Sheffield, for those who've never been there before, just describe what it's like as an event for the athlete and the fan, because they are remarkably close together.
It's a small oval, Collie. I wouldn't characterise it necessarily as an oval. It's a small strip of grass, probably only 50 metres wide. It's an amphitheatre. And the crowd look around and on top of the athletes, 360 degrees around the oval. It is just such a one-off event and such a unique environment. We have corporate hospitality. We have the Cooper's Beer Garden. We have the wine lounge area. We have VIP corporate hospitality. We have Terry McCall of calling all of the races, if you like. We had a DJ there this year. And look, there was probably 4,000 to 5,000 people there, this Bay Sheffield. So that's a really good crowd down there at Collie. And so it's just getting bigger and bigger as an event, if you like, particularly with the nighttime Saturday night 70-metre final. That created a really unique atmosphere. Sunday's major final late in the afternoon, sort of 5 to 6 o'clock. Allowed everybody to get home in time for getting the kids into bed ready for school, So it's a really unique location, Collie Reserve, Glenelg.
Shane, looking ahead to Stawell in April, are there any South Australian athletes who might be competitive there?
A lot of the South Australian competitors will head over there that have done well here over the Bay Sheffield Carnival and associated. I'm not sure how they place with the Victorian handicappers to see whether they're uniquely in a better position than they may have been in South Australia. The VAL, the Victorian League, and the CEL collaborate pretty effectively together to make sure that we have consistent handicapping and it's fair for all of the athletes. So you would expect that our top athletes will head over there. I did note that Aidan Murphy didn't run in the Bay Sheffield this year. I would expect that Aidan would probably go over there. A couple of the Grange track squad athletes that I'm familiar with, Ali Whittingham and co, they will head over. I would expect Kayla Lem and Olivia Hastings and co. So the premier runners, the elite talent, Thomas Semler, they would all be very competitive over there. But keep in mind with Stawell, we have the Queenslanders and the New South Welshmen come down. That really adds an extra piece of strength. One of the Queensland girls won it last year that also won the Surf Australian titles on sand. So, Chloe Maddox Power. The performance and the competition lifts again beyond Bay Sheffield for Stawell. It's the premier event in Australia for pro aths.
And historically, Victorians have never done South Australian athletes any favours at all, Shane. So we wouldn't expect the Victorian Athletic League giving us too many freebies. Hey, just before we wrap it up, what about your own form, Shane? You getting out there and competing much yourself?
Oh, I'd love to, Ben. I'm a bit of a broken down old hack, but can't run much anymore. But my kids run, and they're running in the under 18s for SAL and national and all that sort of stuff. So that's enough for me to keep me motivated. I get to watch them.
Oh, brilliant. Shane, thank you so much for your time.
Good on you guys.